We have some details on President Obama's executive gun reform. The Trace is reporting the following, quote, "A fact sheet circulated by the White House sketched out the package. It includes a plan for the FBI to increase the number of federal gun background check examiners and staff by 50%. So that's the first thing here. They say a proposal to hire an additional 200 federal agents and investigators to focus on gun offenses and regulations. That's thing number 2. Then we have a directive to the Department of Justice, Defense, and Homeland Security to develop research agendas for firearms safety and possible procurement strategies for smart guns. That's thing number 3. And there's going to be a push to ensure that persons, quote, engaged in the business of selling firearms register as licensed dealers. So that's thing number 4, and this is the general breakdown of the provisions of his executive action on gun reform. Now, there's a reason why I'm not calling it an executive order. I'm going to get to that in a second here. But as of right now, gun sellers fall into 2 separate categories. So you have federal firearms licensees, or FFLs as they're called, and private sellers. And FFLs are regulated by the ATF. And they conduct background checks. Now, in 32 states, though, private sellers don't do background checks. So the idea is to get more private sellers who are really big dealers to actually register with the ATF so we can do more background checks. Now, as far as the legality of this, because some people are going to say, well, are we sure that all this is constitutional? We know that all spending bills have to originate in Congress. If they're spending on this and it doesn't originate in Congress, that would be unconstitutional. But they explain here, quote, Obama's new executive actions on background checks do not approach the level of an order. So this isn't an executive order, it's an executive action, which isn't as legally binding. They say rather than a hard and fast regulatory change, which can take longer to develop than Obama has left in his presidency, they represent less formal guidelines that the ATF will implement for gun dealing, which means that Obama may wind up facing criticism not just from those who he's overstepped, but those who could conclude he has not gone far enough. So what they're saying here is there's going to be some real criticism from the left, of all places, because the left is going to say, that's all you did? That's it? Now, the American Constitutional Society supports this move, and if you ask me, my take on it is that it's a step in the right direction. I mean, it's not good enough in terms of what we need to do for the country on the issue of gun reform, but I think constitutionally, it might be all that he can do on his own. And unlike the Republicans, I'm actually consistent in my belief that we should abide by the Constitution and we should stay within the legal framework that we have. So I'm not in favor of unitary executive action overriding the way that the system is supposed to function, because once you set that precedent, then Republican presidents can do the same in the opposite direction. And they can say, I'm just going to override federal gun laws. And I'm going to make them weaker when they're in office. So I actually believe in the Constitution and believe that you have to stay within the boundaries. And the sense I get from this is that President Obama thought, hey, this is all that I could do on this issue to stay within the Constitution, so this is what I'm going to do. Now, in other areas, as we know, the Bush administration and the Obama administration are like, Constitution, smonstitution. Whether it's, us bombing in Syria and being involved in Syria militarily when you need a formal declaration of war from Congress in order to do that, and we've been there for over a year and we have no declaration of war, so that's wildly unconstitutional. But the right wants him there anyway, too, so it's like everybody just silently agrees to do this unconstitutional thing. Or whether it's the NSA and the spying programs and how that basically ignores the Fourth Amendment completely. So in many ways, he does act in an unconstitutional way. I'm against it when he does it there. I would be against it here. If he actually went too far with his executive orders on gun reform, I would be against it here too. But that's the thing. These aren't even executive orders. They're executive actions which aren't as legally binding. So in other words, it's like they're just going to come up with guidelines that they hope people will abide by more since they laid them out. Kind of weak, but again, it might be all that he could do with just the executive branch without going to Congress. And I guess, by the way that he's going to fund this stuff is simply by reallocating money that they already get. Okay, because, you know, like I said, if you're doing something that requires spending, that has to originate in Congress. That's the way that our system of government is set up. So for him to try to do, I'll repeat it here, it includes a plan for the FBI to increase the number of federal gun background check examiners and staff by 50%. So for him to try to increase that staff, they're going to need to, you know, reallocate funds. And for them to try to hire an additional 200 federal agents and investigators to focus on gun regulations, they're going to need to do that as well. And even for the other stuff. So where they try to do research now for firearm safety so we get more data, so then hopefully we can take more action since we have more data, although Congress has shown they're not very good with data. But overall, I support this. Now, in terms of what I would do, so they say that he didn't even close the gun show loophole. He just was shrinking it. So in terms of what I would do, this is an area where I agree with his executive action, and it might be all that he could do within the confines of the Constitution. But through Congress, what I would try to do, and I would push hard, and I would be aggressive, and I would go on the offense, and I would make it a campaign issue, and I would hammer them with it. What I would try to do is call out the Republicans for, very simply just not caring about this issue and what the American people think about it. And why is that? Because they're corrupt, because they take money from the gun lobby. Now, the problem isn't even the members of the NRA, the people. They're fine, they're regular people. 75% of them want universal background checks. The problem is the leadership of the NRA, they take their money from people who make money from selling guns. So there's this unholy alliance where the gun manufacturers and the gun sellers control policy in Congress on guns. Talk about the fox guarding the hen house there. So you have this unholy alliance. There's massive corruption to not get any more gun rules. So I would use this as a campaign issue. The Democrats, broadly speaking, do not take money from the NRA. Maybe there's a few here or there, but most of them do not. So I would say, hey, these guys are corrupt. Look at what they're doing. Hey, 90% of the American people want a universal background check for gun sales. We haven't gotten it. They blocked it. Why are they dictators? Why are they fascists? Why are they tyrants? Why do they hate the American people? Why do they not care what you think? Why are they okay with your kids dying? This is how you play politics, and this is how you win. And I would try to get a massive gun buyback program and give people an offer they can't refuse, so we chip away at the 300 million guns in circulation. Now, I wouldn't do gun confiscation because I actually don't think that's constitutional, and I think that goes too far in the other direction. But I would do a massive gun buyback program to limit the number of guns in the U.S. I would do universal background checks. I would limit high-capacity magazines. I would ban certain kinds of assault weapons, and I would implement some kind of permit system. You know, like if you're a game warden, I get it. You need guns. Great. Well, there's a permit system. You go through it. Boom, you can have your guns. But if you're in a city, if you're in a highly densely populated area, that's just different than rural Montana. You can pretend that's not the case, but it is the case. Okay, so you have to set up a kind of tiered permit system that makes it rational and sane. I mean, the idea that you need all these different forms of verification and this test in order to drive a car, but then for something that's only made to kill and practice killing, well, you just go buy that on a Tuesday before brunch if you're a paranoid schizophrenic and you got 3 felonies in your background. That's fucking crazy. That's fucking crazy. Okay, so again, this is only going to shrink the gun show loophole. That's probably the biggest problem we have. 40% of gun purchases in the U.S. have no background check associated with them whatsoever. Because you just go to a gun show and they just sell it to you. No background check at all. So 40%. So let's say Obama's executive action, I don't know, let's be kind to him. Say, he cuts it 50% from there. Well, that's not enough. We got to close that and we got to get it done the right way. I understand that you can't necessarily do it through executive orders or executive actions. So you have to play politics right to get the right policy. And what the Democrats don't understand is that this is actually an opportunity for them to thrive and for them to win in the next election cycle. If you just message properly and market properly, because this is an issue where everybody's with you in the American public. So use that to your advantage and get majorities in the next election, and then you could actually, get this passed through Congress the right way.